Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night to everyone out there. We're back again with our review of DPO foundations. Today we have Ian Olwana who will be taking us through the chapter 10. That's privacy by default and design. I will then leave it to Ian to introduce himself and do his review on chapter 10. Take it away, Ian.
Uh, Hello everyone. Ian Olwana, privacy practitioner with over 7 years experience in data governance, data protection, privacy matters. Um, I've worked with multiple organizations spanning multiple countries, that is over 8 countries, 14, 15 brands thereabout. They keep growing. I have a bit of experience managing a different organization in different industries. And for today, I want to look at privacy by design and default. So for a start, I just wanted to give like a general comment that it's very critical that in this era we have enough African literature that speaks our language and speaks to what we actually experience in our day-to-day activities rather than the standard way of how we pick content and context from the other established countries. So this book is a timely delivery for the data privacy space because we are getting more Africans writing literature that more relates to how we do things. So the book itself, I'll just do a general overview of the breakdown, and then I'll go now to the specific chapter. So the book talks about foundations of data protection, the principles and practices, and the third part is which has my chapter is risk, harm, and assessment. When you look at foundations of data protection, it's basically what any DPO should understand in relation to concepts, frameworks, and definitions. And privacy is very critical to definitions, and it's very important that every practitioner understands all the definitions for them to move forward. Then we look at principles, which is if you look at any framework in privacy, it always starts with definitions, then you look at the principles, then you can build with anything else. The second part is principles, which when you look at the African setting or basically any kind of jurisdiction, we have the standard ones, then we have a bit of variability. Then now we come into practice. Now on the part three, where we look at the risk, harm, and assessment, I will say this is not the technical part, uh, where the legal mind now has to look at the practicability of how these things actually operate, where the most legal now have to collaborate with IT to be able to bring out to give life to the regulation that was created and put it into practice. So when you're looking at risk, harm, and assessment, we are trying to examine, basically identify or assess uh, the risks that might come up due to privacy. Also look at the framework for just understanding harm related to privacy, which sometimes is technical harm, or it could also be like a legal harm, like penalties. Um, then also looking at modeling privacy threats, conducting impact assessments, and embedding privacy into system by design. So I'll go straight now to the chapter. Um, this chapter looks at privacy. It's chapter 10, looking at privacy by design and default. Um, so privacy by design and default is a principle that requires that any organization is thinks of privacy before they think as simultaneously as they think of any project. So at its core, privacy by design and default is more of like a mindset shift, more of embedding privacy into everyday activity. And it requires that an organization shifts their perspective from or their attitude from being a reactive organization to being a proactive organization. So what does this mean? It means the organization needs to build systems to build privacy into systems. It needs to launch products that are privacy ready. It needs to uh, map data flow before the project starts. Then it needs to have a DP or a champion in every space or in every aspect of it who will always bring out the question, um, the privacy question. So before proceeding to the next step, the question is, have we considered privacy? What kind of personal data is being processed in this at this stage? Have we put in place measures to make sure that privacy has been considered or personal data has been uh, data protection basically has been considered. So if we start, ideally, if this is not happening, then just know you're already late into the game. So it's time that we start shifting the mindset to this concept of privacy by design and default, and make it a norm, and not necessarily wait to being reactive um, and wait for things to go wrong. So privacy by design requires that if you're designing a customer onboarding system, simple example, uh, you start by asking yourself questions rather than build the system. Uh, what kind of data are we going to collect? How long do we need to keep that data? And who who should have access to that kind of data? Uh, So that speaks to access control. It speaks to purpose limitation and retention period. It speaks to basically things like processing, lawful processing of personal data. So that will help you narrow your scope and avoid basically what you call data hoarding, where you collect so much data and end up there is always the attitude of we might need it later, which brings out a privacy risk in the end. So that takes me to the next step, which is practical interpretation, which is practical interpretation. Uh, this part outlines the principles of data sorry, it outlines the principle of privacy by design and default. So I'll try to address them wholesomely. So one of the things that are highlighted very well in the book is ideally you have to have anticipation and prevention. What does anticipation and prevention mean? It means that the first the first group is about being proactive and embedding privacy into design. So in practice, this is where tools like DPI comes in. So basically, whenever you need to next step, tools like or an aspect like data protection impact assessment should be able to help you map out all the processes, assess the risk, um, create mitigation measures, and now come up with a scoring that will allow you to make a decision as to whether you should proceed with this. You should be able to proceed with the whole project, or maybe you need to get either a second opinion, or you might actually need to get approval from the authorities. We know there are countries that require you to have to get final approval whenever conducting a DPA, especially for sensitive data. So those are the things that you need to address. Think about uh, when you're when you're creating an anticipation and more of a preventive mindset, or you're bringing that into an organization. Um, so when we are looking at like a typical situation. You're trying to launch digital services across multiple countries. Um, let's give an example of East African community, and some countries have uh, mature maybe in your branches. Some countries have mature teams, others are still new, and the countries have maybe different levels of data protection authorities. So a mature team will ask early questions like what what are the privacy risks here? You look at a scenario where a less mature team will ask you, do we need to do a DPI? So if you separate these two, you'll realize that this these questions are familiar even in established organization, but when you look at the maturity of the privacy team, or not necessarily the privacy team, but the privacy program in the organization is what will determine the kind of questions that will be asked. So in this scenario, uh, the less mature team tend to see privacy as like as a stumbling block rather than more of like a compliance roadblock, rather than stepping stone towards building trust with the clients or the customer. Um, so okay, then this one will now take me to the next aspect of this chapter, where we are discussing we, we don't necessarily we don't necessarily need to trade off. It is a question that keeps coming up with the uh, for instance, in my organization, the business intelligence team. There is a general belief that the more data you collect, um, the more insight you get. But what we never really consider is the question of quality of data, which takes us back to purpose and things like local processing. So we all understand that data integrity is critical. It has to be uh, it has to be a major part of every data processing element of an organization. So the book actually brings out a good element of trade-off in terms of whether data protection actually, whether privacy by design actually addresses is it a hindrance to the whole process, or does it help to actually deal with the issue of integrity? And what comes out clearly is privacy by design is helps to actually improve quality of data and improves data integrity rather than creating an aspect of very little data. So we usually get this question in organizations: if we reduce data collection, we will lose insight, or such statements, or if we increase privacy, we will slow down the business. So that attitude is now what we are trying to bring out as an aspect of a less mature entity. But now, if you go through the chapter, if you go through the chapter well and you read through, you'll understand that if you understand the risk aspect, if you understand the data quality aspect and data integrity aspect, then you can use the privacy by design as a tool to help you uh, have like a seamless process in your organization that reduces the headache, legal headache as a risk, um, quality issues because of how you have already set up the systems before even collecting the data. That makes it way easier just from a business perspective. It's actually um, directly contributes to the bottom line of your business. And if you're a DPO, then if, read through this chapter, you'll understand how you can easily present this solution to stakeholders and have a project buy-in very easily. Um, so when you look at trade-offs, we also look at it does not necessarily mean that the the best solution has to pick one side. So we can think of something like using aggregated data instead of individual level data, using pseudonymization for analytics, and separating identity from behavior in system design. So those solutions, the things that have come out of the chapter very well. It's something that you can easily read through and figure out how it applies to your organization, and factor that in all your project planning or product building. Yeah. Okay. So uh, the next aspect of this is uh, how you can. Okay, basically it discusses trust, transparency, and control, um, which goes back to the original idea. It requires an organization to have the right attitude for the organization to benefit fully from any from the privacy solutions that are offered. As I mentioned, the biggest headache with privacy is the assumption that it's a blocker and not a solution. There is an interesting statement that if privacy feels like a blocker, it usually means that the design is not complete, is incomplete. What this means is, ideally, privacy is meant to address real life issues. That's why uh, data protection is a human right, and ideally, it's meant to preserve human dignity, to have privacy, and all those aspects. So, if you feel like privacy has come to block your processes, then you need to look at your process well and actually look at how it might be infringing the personal data of data subjects. Uh, so when you try to if you're looking at how to address that as a like a fundamental aspect of an organization, or maybe you're a DPO, this book actually is beneficial to both DPOs, uh, champions, and anyone who's interested in data protection. If it's at managerial level, it's not too technical, it's not too complicated. So if you feel like you need to understand more how to build trust, transparency, and control beyond just marketing tactics and all, then this chapter actually helps you understand better how you can present your organization in a way that can be more trusted. Best example is at some point, I remember Apple um, created a privacy tool where you had to opt in to you had to opt in actually to get for the apps to collect your data. That was Facebook and all the others. And there was an APRO. There was an APRO on from the organizations and marketing, talking about how it's going to affect data quality and everything. The interesting thing is actually the numbers for Apple actually went up, and there was a bit of more trust into how people saw Apple as a brand. Um, so when you're looking at trust, transparency, and control, uh, trust should be built through end-to-end protection. It should be built through transparency and user control, meaning in privacy by design, the user has to take an action for the other entity to start collecting data, which is also the by definition what consent looks like uh, by law. So privacy by design just comes in to complement what the law requires. Um, so in practice, this means data is protected from collection to deletion. Users understand what is happening with their data, and users can take action. Uh, Ideally, trust, transparency, and control gives power back to the data subjects in a way that it gives them respect. It gives them dignity over their data, and it does not make them feel commodified. So if you'd like to understand how to build trust, transparency, and control, we have a lot of a few of examples of how different organizations were able to collect the data in a dignified way without having to be very intrusive, and which led to, you can clearly see there was a level of trust that was built through those initiatives towards the specific brands. Okay. So we also want to look at what what you call when does the rain start beating? Like why would the organization feel like there is this or feel like this is a problem? Um, so example of marketing and communication. Most organizations will prefer that. If you look at an Android phone, it comes already installed with specific applications which uh, maybe you never downloaded yourself. So or you get something, or you're opting into an or to a website, and they tell you by using the website, or you've opted into cookies and all that, whether functional or non-functional. Uh, and now that ideally that is illegal or against the law, but we have a lot of organizations doing that, and it brings friction between the organization and the user. So for you to, I would say the book helps the reader to see clearly where, for instance, if an organization where there is a problem with the um, things like opt-in, things like allowing the end user to control how their data is being used, and being more of controlling their personal data rather than allowing them to maybe give you consent and things like purpose limitation. If a user gives you their data for communication, strictly for communication, or that is what you said in your terms, then it's important that this data is not, or if it was given for research, then it should not be used for marketing. They should start receiving emails promoting a specific product. It means you have to go back and talk to them. But at the same time, the book helps you to map out early the use for the specific the data you're collecting, and practice practice privacy by design, meaning you can assess the different purposes you might need early enough as you collect the data. That way, you do not need to panic later on and need to uh, to collect consent again. Well, it might happen, but it shouldn't be so obvious. You knew you were going to communicate with this or you wanted to send promotional material, but you tried to hide under we are using it for statistics or for communication. So those are the things. There is a way you can do it in a professional way or in a compliant way. So okay, that's okay. So I'll wait. Okay. So okay, thank you. So I'll end that section by uh basically giving a direction which comes from the chapter. Um, the chapter is asking or is pushing the organization to ask the question, what is the safest starting point for a user, rather than what is the most convenient way for a business. Um, it pushes the organization to be more creative, to think harder, to make it more practical in terms of implementation, rather than going for the shortest way. So the next aspect is privacy enhancing technologies, which uh, I'll just list some of them. We have encryption, we have access control, we have pseudonymization and anonymization, and basically these are aspects and there are tools that now help that. And then you have the privacy preserving analytics. This this technology are meant to, if applied well, they'll help the organizations to have privacy using the simplest way possible without having to think too much. Um, for instance, most of a basic IT concept is data in transit has to be encrypted, to prevent leakage and hacking. Or in case a hack happens, then the data cannot be misused. Um, Access control, things like least privilege, uh, must you have access to this? If you don't have to, then why should we why should we give you? So it helps an organization builds more of like a foundation of privacy by design and default, which makes them think less about privacy and focus on other things. So privacy enhancing technologies is here to make sure that organizations focus on the bottom line and reduce the burden on the organization having to keep checking back on whether they are compliant or not. Uh, so for a good example is customer database, especially when it's inactive, it's meant to be encrypted, or at least in the bare minimum, at least it should be anonymized. Otherwise, then you're leaving it exposed. Yeah? So privacy shouldn't be like an architect in the system. It should be it should be more into the system. It should be part of the system from the word go. Um, so the other thing that has been highlighted very well in this chapter is the patterns in privacy and in privacy by design. Uh, and a good example is aspects like granular consent, things like minimal disclosure and progressive disclosure. So, consent in most of the laws, it's defined very well. It has to be equivocal, unequivocal. It has to be, uh, it should not be coerced and all. So, granular consent means you have looked at all the elements of consent and you have captured it very well in terms of the technical implementations within the organization. At every point that data is collected, you are able to bring it out clearly that we need your consent, and this is what needs. This is how we'll process your data, and this is how we'll process your data. Small disclosure speaks back to the aspect of access control, and ideally, it's important that it's important that only the necessary people are able to have access to the specific personal data in a specific space or like a database. Um, a major challenge that organization faces in inconsistency. There are different teams that solve the same problem differently, which ends up being like a clash. Uh, so sometimes you find that IT is, yes, creating information security, but data protection is doing something different in terms of the legal aspect. It could be solved very easily if they worked like a single unit, but now because of most vertical silos, you find that there are multiple, uh, there are parallel initiatives that should have been way efficient if they came together. And so those are the patterns that you can see aside that is privacy focus and one that is maturing into privacy. So if you have aspects like a granular consent, minimal disclosure, and progressive disclosure, then you can easily implement like a standardized implementation different countries, especially for multinationals. So what do we see as implementation challenges for privacy by design and privacy by default? Most organizations actually don't struggle because it's not that they don't care about privacy. The biggest issue is usually operationalizing the whole initiative. Like we have privacy, but where do we start? Where do we start? Common challenges are things like competing priorities. Mostly it's with resources. You'll always privacy will always be put at the bottom because it does not directly affect the bottom line. The question is, you'll always be how does it affect the bottom line, which it actually does. But now, if you go through the chapter, you'll see how it's important to correlate between the initiative and how it actually affects the bottom line. We have an issue of legacy systems. Ideally, we need to move to the next step. Most legacy systems actually have a lot of silo issues. They have they have outdated mechanisms, and they're basically a threat to. They create a risk to the whole organization. Then we have there is insufficient expertise. Most organizations tend to want to bundle up this privacy thing onto something else. Let's give it to the compliance team. Let's give it to the legal team. But then now it also comes back to the competing priorities. At what point, you know, at what point will this expert or will this personnel be working on privacy as much as they have other roles to play? There is a usual pressure to use more data, especially in the age of AI. Everyone wants to streamline or to improve something using data or using AI. And now we are collecting every kind of data, including key logs, to uh, profile people and figure out how to sell more. Um, this are very like this you can see these challenges make it very hard for any organization to implement to become compliant automatically because a major aspect of privacy by design and default is for the organization to be um, for the privacy of the end user to be a priority before at the point of the product being used without the user actually taking any action. Yeah. So all this bringing up become a challenge for an organization that is trying to achieve that. So a simplest solution will be like ideally to just embed privacy into the development process. into procurement, into training and governance. That means privacy comes from the top. It has to be led by it has to be led by the top leadership. It has to be in every aspect of the different departments, including the having champions is part of the privacy by design. And at every entry point of any form tool, then privacy is there. That will make it very easy. That's why procurement is on the list. So ideally, when a new tool is coming in, there is a privacy discussion before it can be adopted. So privacy maturity is built in workflows and not necessarily workshops. So awareness is good, but it has to come back to be implemented into the system, not necessarily be left on paper and trainings. So for me, my key takeaway for this chapter uh, I can break it down into three aspects. One is privacy must be built. It should be built as part of the ingredients to the system. It will not be added later on when the system is ready. Even with the era of agile, we need to have a champion in the team that will keep bringing up the question of privacy as the product is being improved over time. The second thing is the default of a system will always determine the outcome. If the default is collect everything, the outcome is a privacy breach or yeah, it's like a privacy breach. If the default is collect only what is necessary, then the outcome becomes we are compliant. We are working towards compliance. If the default is ask the user if you can collect, then compliance becomes very easy in this scenario. The third thing and the last one is operational process matter more than policies. Policies are good. Policies are they make sense when you're trying to when you're initiating a privacy program, but until the actual technical aspects can be are privacy ready, those policies are just a piece of paper. The only way to bring life into policies is to put privacy into the system. Um, Ultimately, data protection is not just about compliance; it's about people, which I mentioned. Privacy is in most countries, I can say, is a constitutional right, and most acts give life to the right to privacy. So, organizations should know that when all is said and done, uh, they need to treat that data with integrity uh, because they are protecting the rights of the data subject. Thank you so much. I think that will be my submission.
Oh, thank you, Ian. I just would just throw in a bit of I guess you could say, commentary. Um, Based on your what you had said earlier, you spoke about how actually having less data actually improves the quality of data, and that's something I think most organizations don't actually take into account. They actually think more is more, but eventually, whenever you I once did a bit of data analyst course, and what I realized is the first stage is actually clearing out what you don't need. And if you are collecting so much, that actually means there's so much more work to do to actually clean to get your insights on your data. And the other thing I wanted to just throw a comment on is also it's something that from our Wednesday webinar that was highlighted by regulators how, as you just said, you need to have privacy in the organization as a kind of, it's basically making it a culture. And how, so the regulators in the webinar were talking about you can have all that compliance documentation, but if the culture isn't actually there, what you will find is like when the regulators want to really work out if, like, yes, they've got all the papers, but do they have the culture? They'll ask a simple question like, say, for instance, a breach response. So, who's the first person you're supposed to go to? And all that is things that, like, as which, like, allude to what you were talking about. Like, if it's been put into the system by default, then of course everyone will know what to do, how to do it. But if it's just a ticking box, then privacy isn't the default. Um, so just today, this was our last chapter in the book Data Protection Foundations. So I'll be posting this later once it's been processed. Last time it took like a bit of a while. I'm not really sure why it's taking longer to process the videos, but I will have this up as soon as it's processed. I'll have it within the hour of receiving it. Um, I'm not sure about how I might deal with next week. I'm not sure about internet settings, but I'll just update everyone in the group on what's going to be happening next week. I'm going to be out of town for a symposium that's this in Zimbabwe. And I don't really trust the internet and the power for where I'm going. So just letting everyone know. Um, I'll update everyone in the group as usual. But a big thank you to Ian for his time and effort. I really have to say there was a bit of effort considering all the network issues he had. So a big thank you to Ian, and a big thank you to you all for taking your time to attend the meeting. And with that, I'll update everyone in the group. And with that, I say thank you all. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your contributions. And let's stay connected. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you also for your time. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Ian. Bye, everyone.